Get more from your internet with Vibe. From more speed for streaming movies and online gaming to more Wi-Fi coverage for all your devices, Vibe gives you more with the fiber-rich internet you need. Get fiber-rich internet with speeds up to 105 megabits per second for only $29.99 a month for the first 12 months. Sign up today at vibebroadband.com and discover why Vibe means more. Offer ends July 2nd, 2023. Not available in all areas. Modem, certain installations, taxes, and fees extra. Subject to data plan. Visit vibebroadband.com for all restrictions.
Attention podcast listener, we've got an exciting new podcast coming just for patrons of patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1 has begun exclusively for our $5 and up patrons on the Talking Simpsons Network. That's the first 10 episodes of Futurama coming to you once a week.
So just sign up for $5 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons and you'll get Talking Futurama Season 2 and all of our limited miniseries, including the entirety of Talking Futurama Season 1. That's 13 episodes.
That is patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Now please enjoy the rest of this podcast.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello everybody and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we leave random birds in the house. I'm your host, the man with little sticks for legs, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Henry Gilbert, and I promise this show is at least as interesting as a rock.
And who is our special guest on the line?
Hi, I'm Casey, and I've forgotten how to fly.
Oh no, and today's episode is the Hilda episode, The Bird Parade.
Helga! Helga!
It's Hilda, actually.
Yeah, sorry, I'm bad with names, I think.
So this episode is brought to you by one of our highest level patrons, Casey, who happens to be on the line because she gives at the $100 level, and that means you can guest on our podcast once you commit to that for a number of months. Hello, Casey.
Woo!
Hello.
Yes, thank you so
The
much.
rules. I have money.
What a great callback to our last week's podcast.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You must have really enjoyed our one with Little Karibo then. But yes, thanks so much, and thanks for picking Hilda, the Netflix series. Any reason why you wanted this out of all possible shows we could talk about?
I really love this show. It feels like a warm hug to just sit back and watch it. We rewatched a couple episodes last night so I could kind of take notes and refresh myself on it, and ended up watching 6 whole episodes. Just because once you're in it, I was like, you want to make tea? I'm going to make tea. We got some cookies. We curled up under the blanket and just kept watching. It's so kind and nice and warm and inclusive. And I just love this show.
Yeah, it is a tea and biscuits kind of thing to watch with. Yeah, it's very warm. I like that a lot.
I totally agree.
Yeah, a real appeal to me for Hilda, which I until you had asked us to do this one, Casey, I had not made time for it. The second I saw trailers for it when it came out in 2018, I knew I had a feeling it was a show I would really enjoy, but I just didn't make time for it until in the last couple months checking out.
There are so many animated shows on streaming, and 90% of them look bad just because of the budgets they're given and the tools they're using. But this one stood out to me because it actually looks good. And also, I only recently became aware of the world of children's graphic novels thanks to my girlfriend, Nina Matsumoto, who does the amazing scholastic book Sparks 2, Double Dog Dare, coming out August 4th. Please pre-order right now. Woo-hoo. That's my ad up front. But yeah, this stood out to me because now I look at those books when I'm at the bookstore. This stood out to me as a quality book when I'd be flipping through it. And so I always meant to get around to seeing this series, and now I finally am, thanks to Casey.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think books like Hilda, the 2010s was really about series like Hilda, like finding a space for getting comics to kids in a way that major comic book publishers were failing to do, like these comic artists find a way to sell things to kids and this massive audience that, Marvel, DC, they just don't know how to do. They lack the ability to. And Hilda is one of the biggest successes of the last decade in kids comics.
Yeah, and I think in terms of educators that they're really coming around on the idea of graphic novels being literature, because when I was in college like 15 years ago, I did take a young adult literature class, and it was all about that world. And it was just then at that point that they were starting to consider maybe graphic novels can be cool and read, but they were all the examples like, oh yeah, Watchmen and Mouse. Like they're all like, no, if you're going to read a comic, it has to be serious and important. But I think it's been 15 years, and I think they're like, no, if kids are going to read something, they can read a good comic. It doesn't have to be important. And Hilda is definitely one of them. I see it being touted as like teacher approved, parent approved, and the art is very good too.
Yeah, I think a real trailblazer for that was Jeff Smith's Bone finally getting published like by Scholastic. Like that really, I read that book as, a serious indie comic in the 90s, but when it got colorized and published by Scholastic, it became the series like it was always meant to be, like this great all ages book series.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that movie if it's still happening, and I don't know why, but
Netflix is making that. I forgot.
I'm partially offended when I see Bone in the children's section every time, but then I'm like, no, you read it as a child. It's fine.
Yeah, I feel like with the in the aughts and the teens, there was this explosion of manga kind of led the way of, hey, there are comic books for girls, and they're not just hearts and flowers, but they star women or are written by women. And that helped pave the way for artists and writers across the world to have these kinds of stories, these all ages or children or teen or middle grade, what have you. And Hilda was part of that. Yeah, one of the big successes of that wave.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. Like, things are still very gendered for children, but I think things are starting to loosen up a bit. Like, there's no, I'm a girl, I have to go, access the Mary-Kate and Ashley world. I can't play in the adventure world. Hilda feels like an all genders, all ages sort of book where it's not for girls, even though it stars a girl.
No, Casey, I think you have a great point on how Japanese comics in the late 90s and onward, its growing popularity in the U.S., I think really showed, the people who sell books what is popular, and this whole audience that wasn't being serviced by the top companies in American comic books. And, as a fan of Marvel and DC comic books, it still makes me sad that it's been over 20 years, and I still don't think they really understand that market or how to interact with them.
And we've had almost 20 years of manga in real bookstores, and it's still refreshing to see that the kids just sitting in the aisles reading it, they have never left. They're just new kids every 5 years, eating out of little bags of Fritos, reading Naruto and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at Marvel and DC, and I'm not sure if they know how to sell Marvel and DC comics anymore. They're changing it up as fast as they can, man. I don't know. We can't depend on them to lead the way. So that's why I'm glad we have Drawn and Quarterly and Scholastic and all these other presses getting into putting these new voices and interesting stories out in the world.
And another thing in general I really liked about watching Hilda, and I watched about half the first season, was it, hearing these British accents and this kind of tone in a kid's cartoon does take me back to my childhood of watching UK imports on Nickelodeon, especially in the 80s, like Danger Mouse and Paddington cartoons and this claymation adaptation of Wind in the Willows I remember watching.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember watching a lot of Britcoms on PBS as a kid, as a weird little kid.
I watched a lot of. I think I'm about the same age as you guys. I just turned 38 a month ago, so I think we're 82 babies.
Oh yeah,
right.
I'm heading there.
I grew up on a lot of Danger Mouse. I did not realize that was called Thames Entertainment until an adult, because I didn't understand how that word was pronounced.
Yeah, you see THAMES.
Good old Thames. They bring me Count Duckula.
That jingle just tells me this is good. I think that was also tacked on at the end of some Monty Python reruns in my childhood too.
I know the State did a parody of that for one of their openings, the Thames logo.
Oh, yeah.
Except it said the State.
But yeah, I mean, why don't we get into the history of Hilda and how it went from a comic book to a animated series on Netflix? So the creator of the series, both the comic and the animated version of it, is Luke Pearson, who was actually a little younger than us, born October 12th, 1987.
A baby.
In Stockton-on-Tees, England, which I don't know where that is or if I said that the right way. That's like, I would say Lancashire instead of like Lincolnshire. I think it's supposed to be. Worcestershire. Apologies, British listeners. But yes, Pearson is a UK creator. He got his start in, zines and anthology of a more alternative comics variety. If you go to his official website, he has listings of almost all comics he ever did, like a ton of shorts and, grown-up books, including one from 2011 called, like, Everything We Missed that has, like, nudity and violence in it. It's like, whoa, these comics aren't for kids, I'm thinking. But yeah, Pearson, was an accomplished comic artist already by 2010, but what really changed his career in 2010 was the 48-page one-off all-ages comic called Hilda Folk, which was about a young girl who explores a Scandinavian-style wilderness meeting magical creatures. A troll in the first book, Hilda Folk. But it was just 48 pages. When I, heard of these Hilda books, I had assumed they were like, 96 or over 100-page original graphic novels. So to find out that most of them are in the under 50-page variety, that was surprising to see. They're more like, extra long single issue comics, at least by page count. From reading even the first one, Hilda Folk, it's real easy to pick up like the kind of Miyazaki spirit of it. Like,
oh yeah,
I read a really good review by Emily Vanderwolf of Hilda, and she made very funny reference to. Everybody describes this as Miyazaki by way of Scandinavia, and it's hacked to do so, but it's also true.
It's the perfect description, yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it is interacting with nature, but it's not nature is bad. It's let's respect nature and work alongside it. So I could definitely see that.
Yeah. Miyazaki's work, many of its themes are about interacting with the modern world and ancient spirits and trying to find a way to get along. Right from the start with the first story with the troll in the first episode, like that's what it is. You see Hilda as this adventurous young girl who then, without intending to, accidentally, kind of tortures a troll by putting a bell on its nose. But once she removes it, they realize like, hey, we can be friends. Like, that kind of spirit is very much like in Spirited Away, for example, or Princess Mononoke, or even older works of Hayao Miyazaki. Though I also think, something we look over as Americans, another influence of it is the beloved comic series Moomins.
Oh, right. I mean, I'm not very familiar with Moomin. I just know the memes of the Moomin like opening the switchblade, or putting away the switchblade. I see that on the internet all the time. But yeah, it's very, very famous outside of America.
Yeah, it's one of those things you're like, we don't. It's like Asterix, those comics that are giants all over Europe, but we've never read a single one.
There's like a fantastic anime version of Moomin.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. The new series, I think like Taron Egerton is Moomin, and I think Matthew Berry is Moomin Papa. It's a really great cast.
Ooh.
And we got the Smurfs. We could have had Moomin.
We should add Moomin. Yeah, and the Moomins anime from the 80s, I think it was, which does have an English language version, though I don't think it was really aired much in the US, at least in our childhoods. But it looks great, and it's one of those classic, Japan at the time really loved adapting European stories and comics, and Moomins among them. And so the kind of mashup in spirit of Japanese children's animation aesthetics with European nice children's comic strips, that is so indicative in the series of Moomins, which you can also really see in Hilda as well. Especially in the earlier Hilda, the first two Hilda books, they're all her in the wilderness, which is the first two episodes of the series. Then when she moves to Trollberg, the naturalism of Moomins kind of goes away just a little bit, but it's still about interacting with nature, though.
Yeah, I watched the third episode first, and I was like, this series is nothing like I thought it would be. She's just in a city. maybe. But then I realized, like, oh, there's more. It's like a sequential storytelling is happening before this.
Yeah, that's why the reason I picked the third episode was that episodes 1 and 2 are great, and they set up some of the things. Like if you watch episode 3 and you're like, what are you talking about? Her mom has to sign the paperwork. Episodes 1 and 2 set that up, but they also felt like a prologue to the rest of the series because season 3 forward takes place in Trollberg, the city. And it still has that fantasy in the city and let's interact with nature respectfully, and things aren't as scary as they seem if we take them head on. But episode 3 seemed to be like, this is what this series looks like. And 1 and 2 are almost just a setup of where they're coming from when they come into Trollberg.
And Pearson's first book was a slowly growing modest hit in the UK and also spreading to releases across Europe. It was followed with 2011's Hilda and the Midnight Giant, which that's pretty much the basis of the second episode. By 2013, that naming convention of Hilda and the blank, that would continue onward, and it would lead to the first book, Hilda Folk, being renamed to Hilda and the Troll from then on. So that's where, if you're looking to read all the books, Hilda and the Troll is the current name for it. In 2012, they published The Bird Parade with a third book, which would lead to even more success, awards, new versions of it, even getting published outside the UK. By 2013, I think it is when we in the US start getting the Hilda books, and it's doing really well. Like it even gets an Eisner nomination in 2014. So pretty nice for Luke Pearson. And then also, as Hilda was starting to do well in about 2013, Pearson gets the only other animation credit on IMDb for him out there, which is storyboarding on Adventure Time.
Oh, okay. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's absolutely. There's someday we'll do an Adventure Time podcast, and I'll talk about how it's not like they were the first to do it, but Adventure Time in U.S. animation really pioneered reaching out to independent comic artists and going like, hey, would you do a storyboard test? We think you'd be a really good writer, storyboarder for the show because you're so good at doing these comics. Like it opened up a whole bunch of new people. Like Rebecca Sugar, she trained in animation anyway, but she also was looking to be an independent comic creator. And that partially is how she was reached out to do a storyboard test as well on Adventure Time. So a similar situation with Luke Pearson. I think Pendleton Ward, the creator of Adventure Time, read Hilda and was like, this guy could work on Adventure Time. He'd do a great job. So he only is co-storyboarder on 4 episodes, 2 in season 5 and 2 in season 7, which understandable. Like as Hilda's taking off, he doesn't really have time to go full-time as a storyboarder on Adventure Time. I don't believe he moved to Los Angeles either. I think he was still doing it out of the UK. But yes, his episodes, he boarded. The one I remember the most is the episode Frost and Fire from season 5. I don't know if you guys know that one. It is a surprisingly horny episode of the show. But through clever device of storytelling, they find a way to tell a story about, as you get older, you start to have these hormonal feelings, and Frost and Fire is basically about how Finn is starting to date this flame princess, and he can't touch her because she'd burn him, but they're still kind of dating. And then he finds that he really likes watching her beat up guys, and then then he has a dream where she is like shooting fire at him, but it doesn't burn him, and he really likes it.
Oh,
and there's even, I do remember this episode now. Okay,
there's even like in his dream while he's like laughing, he's like, "Hey, it doesn't burn." I mean, she's shooting fire directly at his crotch. Like
I have a serious gap in Adventure Time knowledge, and I do want to do an episode.
Yeah, no, there's so many different periods of Adventure Time. We could do like 5 different episodes.
Is that one of those things that's hard to watch because you need the app, you need a cable box?
Actually, no. It's,
really?
I was just looking because I watched Frost and Fire again last night just to remember it, and in the United States, currently, all episodes, I think every single episode, all 10 seasons are available on Hulu.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
So it broke out of the app like OKKO did.
Though soon enough, they'll be put on HBO Max and probably taken away from Hulu. So you got to move fast. But yeah, so he worked on some very memorable episodes of Adventure Time, but was still focusing on the Hilda books and continuing to write and create them. A fourth book came out and then a fifth, which in fifth takes us up to 2016. And in June of 2016, it was announced that Luke Pearson's series, Hilda, had been licensed for a full season of episodes on Netflix. And the production company that would be leading it would be Silvergate Media, which I had not really heard about before this time. Silvergate is kind of a licensing kids show and merchandise production company that's run out of both the US and the UK. They've done other shows for like Nickelodeon and Netflix. None I'd ever heard of before. This is easily their biggest get, I think, is Hilda. And actually, late last year, they got purchased by Sony Pictures Television. So I think Hilda's about to get a lot bigger as well. And so, yes, Luke Pearson, though, he sold his series for an adaptation, and he's, a co-developer on it as well and serves as an executive producer, though the showrunner and head writer of the series is one Stephanie Simpson. She's you'll see it in the credits, too. She gets head writer credit at the start of every episode and gets writing credit on most episodes of the first season. So Stephanie Simpson, she has a long resume, though I had not heard of her work before, I'm sad to say. Many writing gigs on a lot of educational kid shows going back at least as far as 1995.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she has worked a long time. She worked on Wishbone. That's one of her first
I
shows.
watched Wishbone when I was far too old. He had so many costumes.
It was so cute.
Who wants to see Hamlet if it's not a little dog doing it? Simpsons credits after Wishbone, though. She worked on Barney, Arthur, the Buster postcards from Buster spinoff of Arthur. And got her first head writer gig on the Silvergate series Octonauts, which, again, I haven't seen it. It seems fine. But and Hilda is her most recent credit, Stephanie Simpson. Like, it's her second one as showrunner. And I think she, deserves a lot of credit for how well she deserves a lot of credit for how well the adaptation works because, when you read through the comics, they are a bit spare. Like, the first 4 books are the inspiration for the whole first season, but they have to add a lot of characters and put in a lot more time and build out things to make these basically 200 pages of comic books work out to be 13 half hours of kids' cartoons.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I didn't watch the entire first season, did they run out of material because there's now a movie greenlit or a special greenlit in another season? I'm wondering if they'll have to start making things up for this world,
Well, for the first season, they already did make a
That's
bit
true,
of stuff
that's
up.
true,
So,
yeah.
So the first season basically comprises the first 4 books, though the 4th book is kind of the finale. I believe the season finale is basically the 4th book, and they just fill in between. So for the second season, they only have the 5th and 6th book, but I think they'll do what they did with these first 4 of just like use that as a building point to work from.
I'm waiting for the Hilda filler arc where she's training.
She gets trapped in a dream world or in a computer simulation that doesn't move forward the story in any way.
She goes to an island that we never hear from again.
But yeah, I think too, this adaptation of they found a way to fill it out without really compromising on the whimsical feel of it or the unique art style. Like if you look at the art over the basically 6 years of Hilda comics up to the point of the production on the show beginning, you can see Pearson evolving and changing up the style as he goes. Like you can tell from reading the first one, he wasn't thinking this would be a cartoon show and he'd need like set rules for everything or a ton of character design consistency. So by I think the 4th or 5th book, it looks a lot more in line with what the animated series is, and I really like how they keep like the unique art style in the show in how much they adapted it. Like I think my favorite is how the skyline, instead of being, a very techie looking or a clear gradient, it's like, no, these are three stripes of color, like with clear demarcation of what they are.
And
no matter what time of day it is, it's three stripes of dawn or three stripes of sunset or three stripes of night. I love it.
And I also like how the line work doesn't always connect to each other. Like the lines around the characters are a little sketchy. Yeah, this actually, I don't know if this is a weird comment, but it reminds me of this is like an indie video game I'm watching. It's like this is totally like indie video game aesthetic I'm looking at. The music, the designs of the characters, the colors.
Yeah,
this could be a platformer, and it should be.
I think there is a Hilda phone game, but I think it's more like a collectathon type thing. She should get a Night in the Woods type video game.
Yeah, Night in the Woods.
I was thinking that too. Like with this color palette, I feel like I was thinking of Night in the Woods.
That's perfect.
Yeah, no, especially in this episode as they're exploring around this, suburban type city of Trollberg. I like to think of. I was thinking of it. Yeah,
that has like a weird pagan festival, like in Night in the Woods too.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
And also a big part of the adaptation of this was expanding on characters Frida and David, who you see very briefly in this episode. They're the Sparrow Scouts who, they're minor characters in the book. I read on the wiki, like, in the book, they just really appear in this one book and they're just kind of in the background after. But in the show, like, they're full-fledged co-stars in the show with Hilda.
Yeah, as the episodes continue, Frida and David are sort of Hilda's the kids she actually makes friends with and lead her through Trollberg and sort of are her guides as like, no, this is what normal kids do. And this is, and have their own issues with supernatural or folklore or fantasy things that they try and work together and solve.
Yeah, and if you want to expand a show, I get, for one-off books or maybe even like a movie, Hilda and Twig going on adventures, like that works enough as just a solo adventure for her. But I can see that, like, if you want to tell varied stories, you need a bigger cast beyond just Hilda, Mum, and Twig, So I can see why they grew it both with the Sparrow Scouts and also with Alpha hanging about as well. So art director and series director for every episode is Andy Coyle, Canadian animator who worked on a few shows, but this is his first one really in the lead. When I look at his IMDb, the earliest is he's an intern on Home Movies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But then Andy Coyle, he worked on Atomic Puppets, Space Knights Go, and 3 Delivery, all shows I'd not heard of before.
And this show is animated in Vancouver.
Yeah.
My favorite city.
This is a Vancouver-ass show.
There's so much animation happening in Vancouver. It's the new Hollywood. It's the new Termite Terrace.
It's crazy how much, and every time I look up a modern show, I'm like, well, where did they animate this? Oh, also Vancouver. It's all...
It's a real Toontown, if you will.
Yeah. It's a pretty impressive accomplishment that he's the credited director on every episode, too. So the lead of the show, Hilda, is voiced by Bella Ramsey, who a 16-year-old actress who I think is most known to folks for playing this child queen in the later seasons of Game of Thrones. Are you a big Game of Thrones watcher, Casey?
I was until about season 5 when I was like, ooh, all the women are really getting the short end of the stick now.
No, everybody really, she was a standout from season 6 onward. I think she was a lot of people's favorites back in there.
I think if you're a British actor and you're alive, you were in Game of Thrones at some point, even if you didn't realize it.
Harry Potter. It was one or the other.
I think I remember reading about Harry Potter that Bob Hoskins was mad. He was like, look, if I'm not in Harry Potter, I feel insulted at this point. Like, her character's name was, you would think Bella Ramsey would be like her character name in Game of Thrones, but
that's a real Thronesy name.
It was Lyanna Mormont.
Okay.
And
that was definitely her.
Yeah, she. I liked her character too in the little bits of Game of Thrones I watched. Didn't much care for how they wrote her off the show, but isn't that the way in all of the finale of Game of Thrones? But yeah, she's. I mean, that's a big get for them. Like a great British child actress. They need that to really lead a show with Hilda, and I think really good casting there.
Absolutely. That's a very impressive range she has to go between Lyanna Mormont, who is very taciturn and very aggressive, and Hilda, who's so optimistic and open-minded and wants to explore. That's I had never considered those were the same person.
I'm wondering if she's going to go on to bigger and better things, because I think basically every actor, once they got freed of their Game of Thrones contract, got cast in a Marvel movie or some other giant film franchise. So who knows? She could be the next MCU superstar, I think.
She's a future Dazzler.
And meanwhile, the rest of the cast is, it's a lot of great actors, but who come from like a bunch of different backgrounds. But almost none of them have like big name credits to them. There are a lot of, I think it was pretty much all recorded in the UK. So when I look at the experience of almost all the actors, I'm like, oh, you've just been in BBC shows. You've just been in BBC shows. You were a one-off voice in one Harry Potter film. Like Mum is voiced by Daisy Haggard, who was in lots and lots of BBC series, none of which I particularly recognize.
All these names are so British.
You got Rasmus Hardiker.
Oh my God, you made that up.
No, he's the voice of Alfred. He's
Rasmus Hardiker.
Hardiker.
I think Hardiker.
Okay.
Hardiker.
And he's known. He actually does a lot of video game voices. He was the voice of the Luminary in Dragon Quest XI.
Oh yeah.
So have you ever heard the Luminary, the lead character of Dragon Quest XI, like, huh? That's,
so he grunted 8 times and cashed a check.
And he was also on the DC television show I never watched, Krypton, the show about what happened on Krypton before.
They made something like that, I guess.
Yeah, they
This is one of those on a streaming network that we don't watch kind of things,
pretty
right?
much,
Yeah.
but soon that'll be on HBO Max, and
Oh my
we'll
God.
stream it all too.
Or it was sci-fi, so it'll be on whatever Comcast streaming network that they come up with will be.
Oh, that's
Or
right.
the Peacock.
Oh God, that Peacock. But yeah, and meanwhile, some actors, this is their voice acting debut. Like Frida's voice actor, Amira Falzon Ojo. Or Ojo, sorry, OJO is how it's spelled. This is basically her first job, other than like one BBC kid show I'd never heard of before. So it's I think it's a really good voice cast that you need a lot of unknowns who just sound like, especially with how many kid characters you have in it, like it just comes off as more natural. And yes, as you said, Bob, animated out of Vancouver at Mercury Filmworks, the same folks who animate the Mickey Mouse shorts that we just talked about a few months ago.
Very good. Now, this is a very good looking show for Netflix. I won't say it's like outstanding and amazing and like a 10 out of 10, but it's much better than I would expect from streaming networks. This is not saying, animators are lazy or there's like, no enthusiasm. It's just they don't have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. There's so many things being funded and they don't have a lot of time. But for some reason, this was allowed to look very good. And I still think the high water mark is the very oddly made Green Eggs and Ham Netflix series. Watch an episode of that. It's crazy that it's allowed to look that good. And I hope that will let people say, maybe an adult cartoon or a cartoon for streaming does not have to look bad. Maybe we can have like good animation. This is a very good animated show. Well animated show, rather.
I don't know if you guys have watched The Dragon Prince on Netflix at all, but the first season of that looked very stilted, like they had no money, and it was like, oh, I think there's going to be a fight scene, like everyone's turned away whenever they speak in this episode.
Oh yeah.
I think it must have done well because seasons 2 and 3 have looked so much better. I'm like, all right, good. They got their budget up. I'm proud of them.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I think, this is not sometimes we could be a little harsh to the look of some, especially on streaming networks, animation quality. But I never want to say that's like, oh, the artists are lazy or they're not trying hard. Like, everybody tries hard. But I do think on like, and they do great work with the assets they are given in the budget they're given. But I do think sometimes, especially on streaming networks, they don't give the kind of budget that like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon might give to a show. And they also, I know Rocko's Modern Life, they made a great joke about this, but like, computers do everything.
Yeah.
Cartoons are so easy.
And that was allowed to look good too, but I guess that was made for Nickelodeon and Netflix just like grabbed it.
Well, that's also why I think it was probably by costing what it should cost. That's why Nickelodeon was like, whoa, this costs too much money. We got to shut this down.
Sell it to somebody.
But yeah, it's animated by Mercury Filmworks using the Toon Boom program, just like Mickey Mouse as well. And I think like the Mickey Mouse shorts, there are some static elements that I think people would relate to Toon Boom, but they also find a lot of fluidity and personality that come through skilled animation in the Toon Boom program. So yeah, look, does it look as good as some more expensive shows? I think on its best in its best moments they do. And I really would like to think that in season 2 for Netflix, they're going to get a bigger budget as well, too.
Here's hoping. Yeah, I guess I'd just like to say, what a cartoon audience. If you learn anything from this episode, if you ever don't like anything on a streaming network, on a regular network, on cable, it is an executive's fault and not the artists who made it.
Yes, yeah, please.
Yes,
Please
always
remember.
blame executives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yes, for the 13 episodes, as is Netflix style, all dropped on the same day in September of 2018. Then the next year, Luke Pearson would publish the 5th book in 2019, which was 80 pages long. And Pearson himself on his Twitter account has a helpful guide of like, hey, here's where the first season ends. If you want to read ahead, read this book if you want to skip. But the show is a real critical hit both in the US and internationally. And Netflix never releases their ratings or anything. You just have to guess at it. But it easily was popular enough to justify a renewal that happened pretty soon after the first season dropped. So I think that's a sign that it was a success. Mm-hmm. I saw some people bring up that like Netflix they tried to say one of their original movies, I think it was Irishman, but they're like, 80 million people watched this.
No, Bird Box.
Yeah.
And we all still talk about Bird Box.
I think somebody got them to clarify. It's like, well, we mean that somebody watched like 3 minutes of it before changing to something else or not.
Or you were idle and it auto-played Bird Box while you're out of the room.
Or I think there was a TV series they dropped and it was like, well, people they were like, 10 million viewers watched it. And it's like, well, you had 10 million streams of the first 3 minutes of any of those episodes. So that means some people watched it all the way. Some people watched episode 1 and stopped. That doesn't accurately describe whatever they were getting at.
Yeah, that's like counting watching a trailer of something as the ratings for it. Which that it always, when Netflix ever releases those things, it makes me feel like, so wait, this is more popular than Game of Thrones ever is, and I never hear anybody talking about it. That doesn't seem possible. But that's just that's just a credit to how there's just not a monoculture anymore. Like there's, but that I think a quality of that is that shows, to bring it back to Hilda, shows like Hilda can, succeed in their own way without having to be a $1 billion franchise to continue existing. Mm-hmm. But yes, the second season is coming out this year, as is a 70-minute TV movie, I guess you'd say. I don't know the term for. I guess you'd call
special.
It a Netflix
OVA?
special. OVA.
OVA. Ooh, Hilda OVA. Even more violent.
So we've got that to look forward to in 2020, and things are looking bright for Hilda. I don't know when another book will be coming out. I didn't see if Pearson had announced that yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they can pull off in the second season. Once they've for every animated series, the first season really is like practice, and I would think they're going to really expand on what they did so well in the first season with the second one. So I'm looking forward to it. All right, why don't we take a quick break? When we come back, we're going to dive into Scene by Scene, Episode 3, The Bird Parade.
You make me feel like a fool, waiting for you. You make me feel like a
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, happily cataloging rocks in this break.
Hey everybody, it's Bob Mackey. Very happy we're doing another Pro Bird episode of a show.
And a big thank you to our major Patreon supporter, Casey, for picking Hilda as her episode to guest on. And she is one of our many great patrons who helps us do this as our full-time job and making awesome podcasts like this and its sister show, Talking Simpsons.
That's right. If you want to support our network and get all kinds of bonus podcasts on top of that, please head on over to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And if you sign up at the $5 level, you'll get all of these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free. And you'll also have access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That's all of the extra podcasts we've made for the past 2.5 years of this Patreon. That is over 100 bonus podcasts. So if you like listening to our voices and us discussing cartoons, you'll enjoy those extra ones we've got on the Patreon. That includes stuff like our limited miniseries like Talking Critic, Talking Futurama, Talking of the Hill, and Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 1. There will be 2 new miniseries coming in 2020 for our $5 patrons. There's also lots and lots of interviews. We have end-of-season wrap-ups, deleted scene specials, our community podcasts from the archives, and so much more. There's a lot going on, and again, if you only listen to our free stuff, there's so much stuff you're not hearing that's on the Patreon. And Henry can tell everyone out there what is happening at the $10 level. 1 extra long podcast every month about a movie chosen by our patrons.
That is correct. We do the What a Cartoon Movie once a month for our $10 and up patrons. We release an extended preview of it into our feed, in the What a Cartoon feed for the rest of you folks. But if you wanted to hear the full, sometimes over 4 hours, discussions of animated feature films, you need to step it up to the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. The Great Mouse Detective is coming this month for the What a Cartoon Movie, the Disney's underrated 80s film. You should really check that one out. The last month we did The Animatrix, and we've done over a year of these monthly podcasts. So many great ones you could be listening to right now. Our chats about Kiki's Delivery Service, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Beavis and Butthead Do America, The Iron Giant, which, has a lot of similarities to Hilda as well, Toy Story, Nightmare Before Christmas, and so many more. You can only hear over 50 hours of podcasting goodness for the What a Cartoon Movie if you are a $10 and up patron at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it's incredibly easy. And once you sign up, you're given access to a code that you have access to at all times. You just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts. It's so easy to listen to our bonus podcast alongside your regular free podcast. And Patreon also has a very good app that you can just download to a smart device and listen to our bonus stuff that way. Either way, it's so easy to do and so easy to access all of our bonus content we've made for the past 2.5 years.
So please check all of that out at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And now let's resume our cozy little British discussion of Hilda and the Bird Parade.
I love it here in the wilderness. There's mystery everywhere you look. Come on, Twig. Let's get my sketchbook. Done. Time to go.
Hilda, we have to move to Trollberg.
Please, Mum. We've been here since I was born. It's literally the best place ever.
Hello.
I bet we wouldn't have neighbors like this in Trollberg.
It's drafty in here. You should really close that door.
Just keep an open mind. You might find the city more fun than you think.
It still can't match the wilderness for interesting creatures.
Oh, no?
I'm Hilda. I just moved here. Want to be friends?
We are Spur Scouts. Friendly and helpful to all. Hilda!
Wow, this is amazing. There's a great big world out there. There's so much we've never seen. Whoa. So much we don't know. Such is the life of an adventurer.
Okay, we are back to talk about the third episode, The Bird Parade. This one is written by Kenny Byerly. Most of his credits over the last decade are as writer-producer on a lot of different shows. He worked on the 2012 version of TMNT. I believe that's the first Nickelodeon one. He worked on the Nick show Robot and Monster. The current Disney series Big City Greens, which I've watched a couple episodes of that. It's not bad. I kind of like it.
I've only seen promos during New DuckTales, but it looks cute.
I'm sad to say I've watched as many episodes of Big City Greens as New DuckTales. I got to make time for New DuckTales. I know.
It's there. It's waiting for us. I do too.
I only want to watch New DuckTales. It is made exactly for me, but it's one of those things where it feels too daunting to just like pick up. There's so many great episodes, but he's not just Kenny Byerly worked on kid shows. He also wrote for the Seth MacFarlane one-off season series Border Town, which
right.
Yes. Yep.
That Seth MacFarlane?
I mean, he was an executive producer on it, but the creator of the show was a different artist.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I was just confused for a second.
Yeah, but let's not talk about
no,
Town.
that's fine.
I have to say thumbs down right now to IMDb because they did not get the credits properly attributed on there. I had to look this up myself. The storyboarder of this episode is Seema Virdi, who storyboarders are so important, and they don't often get as much credit as they do. I really love the Cartoon Network thing of like on all their shows, and I believe it's on Disney shows too. Border gets right up front, like they're right there with the writer on the credits, or as writer, basically. I had to dig to find out Seema Virdi was the border on this. She's a very experienced border, has worked on shows for at least the last 6 years, worked on the recent-ish seasons of Fairly Odd Parents.
There were recent seasons of Fairly Odd Parents?
Oh, yeah. That show never stopped.
I know Butch Hartman is a weirdo. That show was kind of fun. Are the new ones any good? I've never heard anyone comment on them or anything.
There's a new girl co-star with him. I know that. And I remember watching one and it seemed fine, just as good as the regular.
Yeah, I watched the first 2 years of that show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. One of these days we'll do a Fairly Odd Parents episode.
I didn't know there was a girl co-star. I knew they had a baby.
Yes.
But that's the last I heard of them.
I rode the Fairly Odd Parents roller coaster at the Mall of America because it's about 8 years out of date. Let's say 14 years out of date.
Also, Seema Virdi worked on the Ugly Dolls movie and another,
Did you know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Henry. Did you know I saw a trailer for the Ugly Dolls movie and Pitbull explained to me ugly stands for you gotta love yourself. That's what ugly means.
Look.
Pitbull told me this in a movie theater.
That's nice.
It was inspiring.
When I saw the trailers for that and also the Trolls movies, like they are. Look, I'm sure kids will love them, but it really is just the most bland of positivity mixed with moderately to somewhat famous musical stars who are going to sing a song in it.
And maybe Zendaya.
Yeah. Zendaya will be there as at least one person.
It's like baby's first jukebox musical.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Exactly. Oh God, that
movie Sing was like that, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a huge hit. Sing is the most obvious of things of just like, we'll make a movie about a music competition just as an excuse for singing covers with a bunch of animals. And it is a giant hit. Every just song from it that's on YouTube has tens of millions of views.
God.
Kids love it.
This is very trite, but the trailer for that movie told me the entire story. It's like, will this character win the competition? Oh, they did. Excellent. Very good.
But also, Seema Virdi, last one I'll bring up is she most recently has a storyboarding credit on the Netflix series Kipo or Kipo. I haven't watched it. That show looks good. I like the look of it.
I have seen many a Tumblr post of people saying, this is amazing. Why is no one talking about it? So I really have to sit down and watch that one.
I have seen my gay pals on the Twitter who like gay cartoons bring up that there's some gays in that show. And I mean, I celebrate any show that shows kids that you don't have to just be straight like that. Mm-hmm. That is, Steven Universe really paved the way on that stuff. They really did. I think it's pretty great in this post Steven Universe world what shows can do.
Also, Netflix She-Ra. Very gay.
Oh man, yeah. I mean,
I forgot about that.
I think predominantly the writers on the show are LGBT. So
I had never seen the original She-Ra, and it was on at a bar when I was in Vancouver, and I was like, this show is so horny. How did they let this on TV? The original one.
That sounds like a cool bar.
It was a nerd bar.
Nice.
I've watched a couple episodes of that She-Ra show, and I do really like it. I need to watch more of it. As a kid who grew up loving He-Man, I'm sure the new He-Man thing they're making that's animated, that is apparently supposed to be more of a throwback, I'm sure that'll be good. I'll like it. But I would like a show run by gays just like She-Ra made of He-Man that's like super gay as well. But anyway, yes. That's who worked on this episode of Hilda as boarder and writer. Director was Andy Coyle, like all the other ones. The opening, really cool opening, song by Grimes.
Old Grimy.
Old Grimy.
Whatever happened to Old Grimy? Don't you mean Miss Musk?
No, I did not want to comment on her personal life.
She's got the Musk baby in her now.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm sorry to bring us all down. No, I mean, I think she's kind of a weirdo, obviously, but this song is great. I like this. I actually listened to it a few times.
Yeah, it's a really nice song, and I think the composer for the series, I think they took her music as a starting point, and so a lot of the background music really responds to it too. Plus, not in this episode, but like in the second episode and others, they do use licensed songs from time to time. Like there's a really good like kind of twee one called "Fool" that in the second episode that I really like.
Yeah, this opening song and the background music really again made me think of like, an indie platformer. This is what this should be. But I have to say that when I saw the description of this episode before I watched it, I was worried because it's about an injured bird. And I am very sensitive to birds being hurt or killed in media. And of course, in real life, too. I mean, there are lots of people who are like, I can't watch a dog get hurt in a movie or a dog get killed. And there are websites you can go to like doesthedogdie.com or whatever that will tell you that. I am like that, but with birds. And I will say that people in general are much crueler to birds for some reason because I guess they're not mammals and they can't like empathize with them enough. So I was very worried that there would be too much bird pain in this show, and there wasn't.
Yes.
The injury is very light. It's mainly amnesia-based injuries, but yes, I was very, very anxious about watching this. So, but it ends up to be like a totally pro-bird celebration of birds, this whole episode. So I really liked it for that reason.
Yeah, thank you, Casey, for picking the most pro-bird episode of the season.
Pro-bird podcast.
I think it tells a story that a lot, several Hilda ones are a lot of the best kid stories about that have like magical elements to it. You start with a recognizable down to earth kind of starting point, which is being sad or being upset that you see like mean kids hurt another animal or something. But then from there, it jumps off to like, oh, what if that animal was a magical creature and then you help him save the day? Like it's a really great starting point for the story.
This show kind of works in a little bit of that same area Buffy did, with a little bit of like the metaphor of here's the down to earth thing and here's the supernatural thing. So yeah, she comes into Trollberg. She's not sure where she fits in, and finds out, no, there's still supernatural stuff here that happens all the time. There's still pagan rituals and parades in this town, and the town knows trolls exist and built a wall, and that she will find a place here. But also she saved Grand Raven for the parade.
I love that Hilda as a character. I really like that she, she's very self-possessed and smart and strong-willed, but they also do give her like flaws of being sometimes like that leads her to being a little obstinate or being like, well, no, I know what I'm doing.
I did see myself as a kid in this character a lot as someone who like preferred to be alone and like have my own little worlds and playtime and stuff like that. So I could definitely, I could identify with this character.
Wanting to camp out in like the living room or in your own room indoors. I was like, oh yeah, I totally get this.
Not wanting to make friends ever.
Yeah.
I want to be isolated and weird.
Yeah, I can, Hilda's not as anxiety riddled as I was as a kid.
No, same here.
But yeah, wanting to be alone and being like, oh, I don't need more friends. I've got imagination. But and as I get older, I can identify with Mum in this show, the mother. there because she is very nicely, but still, in a friendly way going, you could make some other friends too. I think it'd be good.
It's kind of interesting how different parents are in the shows that are on now compared to the shows where we grew up, where parents were like authority figures. They never understood you. They were like the enemy, the adversary. Look up Codename Kids Next Door for another example. But yeah, and I see in these modern shows, it's like, no, parents, like they're willing to compromise and work with you. It's a more healthy view of parents than like the classic Nickelodeon adults stink.
Yeah, you get the sense that mom is trying her best and, still knows about all the... One of the things I appreciate about this show is that everyone seems to acknowledge that there are supernatural things around. I feel like in a lot of the cartoons we had growing up, the kids knew about the supernatural things, but if they tried to explain them to adults, everyone would be like, oh, you're so crazy. And like the adults never knew. And it's like, oh no, here the town is still having a festival where they expect to see a Thunderbird.
Yeah.
And they're like, so there's never like mom being like, oh, you're talking to your little elf friend, huh? That's like, no, yeah, of course. You're talking to your elf. Let me sign the document so I can see him too.
One visual device I thought they were going to use is that when later in the episode when Hilda meets the Raven, it's this very fun cartoony design and it talks and everything. And I assumed that when the mom would see it, it'd be like a very realistically rendered bird. But no, it's still the same goofy looking cartoon. So I really enjoyed that. Like, oh no, these magical things are real.
I think that kind of storytelling of the disbelieving parent who just says like, would you please stop, like all that kind of goes back to, like The Little Prince and that kind of era. And I mean, farther still, but that it's all about how like adults don't understand things, or even just this statement of kind of like you lose something when you become an adult. You lose this sense of wonder or ability to understand the world, and I like that in characters like Mom in this show, it shows that like, no, you don't necessarily have to lose that, and if you try to reach some understanding with your kid and see it on their level and treat them at least a little more as an equal, you don't have to lose that kind of sense of imagination or wonder. You can just be, more realistic, perhaps. In like, I think Hilda doesn't understand how much her mother probably needs to pay bills or earn money, but it's a sweet relationship that's really on display in this episode. So the episode begins with a fun little misdirect that you think that Hilda is still camping in the wilderness, and her and Twig and Alpha are eating very yummy looking sandwiches. Twig, this is pretty much the only thing he does in this episode. Her dear fox doesn't get too much to do.
Yeah, I assume that he plays a bigger part elsewhere in the series.
I think he's a very good boy, and he comes up more in the series.
It's a great design for that character.
But yes, their nice camping is interrupted in this first clip.
Something's out there. Something dangerous. And I suspect it means to eat us.
Hilda, what are you up to in here?
Camping with Twig and Alpha.
Alpha, the elf, he's here?
Yes, he's here to file reports about the city back to the other elves. They don't really care about Trollberg, but they love receiving reports.
They do. What do you say we go out for a walk and see the city a bit?
But the city is so cold and dull. There's nothing to do out there.
Hilda, I insist. You haven't been out of the house in days.
Fine.
She'll see you later, Alpha.
Mum, he's over there.
I'm just thankful my mom never made me get out of my room. Her stance was he's staying out of trouble, so he should be playing all these video games and watching all these cartoons. And I made it into my job.
He can't join a violence gang in his room.
That's true.
No, I like that her mom is trying to meet her halfway, but also being like, look, I must insist. You've been inside too long, and that I like too that Hilda is mature enough to not throw a tantrum of just like, no, I'm not going outside. She's like, Okay, fine. I'll listen to you. Like it's a nice cooperative relationship they kind of have.
Yeah, in the first 2 episodes, which are about Mum and Hilda living in the wilderness and the bureaucratic elf society that Alpha comes from, they are like giants unto them, so they would like them to leave. And you get that sense of Hilda doesn't want to leave. She loves her life out here, but she realizes, oh, our life out here is causing undue stress to all these people. And also maybe there's something interesting about Trollberg. And so she also is mature enough to go along with her mom and say, okay, let's try this new adventure and move into the city. And that's really nice that she's not dragged kicking and screaming to move to the city.
And in those first 2 episodes, I really like some of the themes they play around with too, not just of like the story of a politician succeeding by scapegoating somebody. I like to engage with that, but also just the way they use size and perspective to express, like, Hilda doesn't understand what it's like for the little folks until she sees her perspective in relation to the giant walking around. She's just like, oh yeah, this is similar to what we've been doing to them. I understand now. Though I also love her frustration in that episode when they're like, you keep walking on our stuff. You need to think about it. She's like, you are literally invisible.
The paperwork is right there. It's very easy to fill out.
Alpha is such a funny character. I love that he is a very, bureaucratically minded, peppy young man.
He's a little Hermes running around.
Yeah, you're right. And then he's also out to interview people or just like send reports home. He's a fun little friend to give Hilda in the show, who also can work as a seemingly imaginary friend that the mother doesn't fully believe until I guess she fills out the paperwork. But yes, Hilda is taken outside to the horrible outdoors with smog and everything. And there's the continuing gag in this episode, or a running metaphor, is just how they keep comparing the city to rocks, and how for Hilda, rocks are great. Not the definition of something boring, but the definition of a great thing is a rock. Here's a little chat that Hilda and her mother have on their way outdoors.
Don't be so dramatic. The truth is, there's lots to do in Trollberg. In fact, there's a big parade this evening with floats and decorations and lights and loud music. People in weird costumes.
I suppose that sounds cool. I've never seen a proper parade before.
Why don't we go down and watch it together? You might find the city more fun than you think.
It still can't match the wilderness for interesting creatures.
Oh, no? I see a few interesting creatures right over there.
Where? Oh.
Why not go make some new friends?
I mean, the scariness of being told, like, make new friends with kids you haven't met before, like, that chilled me to the bone with recognition as a kid. Just the idea of, like, oh, I have to, like, even, like, meeting a cousin you've never met before, like, spend time with your cousin, like, I don't want
You're both
to.
children. You have so much in common.
And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't in this show. But I like too that her mother is she's starting to explain why she loved Trollberg, and part of this too, the whole episode is her mother trying to explain to her, like, well, this was nice in my childhood and I want you to enjoy things in the way I did as a kid. And also I do like that Hilda, she tries to start an adventure and the mom's like, no, you have to talk to friends. I don't care. The lightning she sees must be the Thunderbird arriving, right?
Yeah.
I think it is.
And she's talking to Hilda using her terms, like, there are creatures you could investigate. And then later she talks about the nuances of the city, or like the nuances of nature. So she's trying to be like, I'm going to try to speak to you in your language about this place I like.
It's really charming. And you get a sense of, by the end of the episode, you get a little bit of a sense of what Mum's childhood must have been like, that she also in the city was a little bit of an adventurer, that she knows, like, the back road for them to run in the last act. So you get a sense that Mum really feels for Hilda and understands where she's coming from, even if she doesn't always agree with what she wants to do.
Yeah, and I like too that they show her as, this single parent who takes time to understand her child on top of getting everything else done. I think the show is arguing that a good version of parenting involves knowing your kid well and understanding them on that level instead of just bossing them around or viewing them as like an employee of some kind. But yes, Hilda is pushed to befriend these new kids who. I was like her watching this. I was worried for her of like, are these kids going to be instantly mean to her? How are these new friends going to treat her? But I think it's really interesting how they play the kids in this. They could have been way worse, and I was expecting them to be like, "Get out of here, dork! You don't know any of the city stuff. What's with those stupid shoes?"
I was expecting outright hostility. Yeah.
But instead, they're somewhat inviting in this first clip.
Did you see that? I swear I just saw some lightning. But the sky's so clear.
Don't change the subject. You're always saying how you can make friends with elves, trolls, and giants. Compared to that, talking to some kids should be easy.
Hello, I'm Hilda. I just moved here. Want to be friends?
Hi, Hilda. Nice to meet you. Welcome to Trollberg. Well, come on.
He's a bird killer. Stay away.
But that's also what I kind of like about these mean little kids is that no, they're very nice to her and they're very welcoming and they're like, oh, hi, hey, what's up? Oh, that's cool. You used to live in the wilderness. Oh, let's go throw rocks at birds. Like they can be very nice. They're not that all around, I'm the mean bully. And so I'm mean in every way, that it's nuanced enough to be like, yeah, some people who are nice to other people can be just absolute shits to animals or not people.
Yeah, I think they're played as like mischievous city kids who are just used to like, innocent enough pranks of knocking on a door and getting someone to answer it and running it away. Like that's not incredibly nice either, but it's not like it's an okay brand of mischief, I suppose. But
right, low level prankery.
But you can see Hilda is instantly uncomfortable with it, though. She's not enjoying it. But I like that they are at least somewhat inviting to her instead of just being straight up mean. And I also like that Hilda just being asked to do one prank, she can't do it and instead just compliments a grandmother's flowers.
Doesn't even understand like the point of it. Yeah. Is to trick someone.
Yeah, I love that little thumbs up she gives at the end. Like she's like, I still did good.
And all the other kids just slap their face like, oh, this kid, she's too nice. I also love the design on the old granny that her pile of fluff, this like seemingly just old dog that's being carried around by
I didn't know
her.
what that was.
This indoor dog that's probably pretty elderly too, can't do much more than just be held in like a roof. They go to the next scene of them still hanging out. They try to play, I guess, basically a game of hacky sack with a can. And that, again, feels like a very familiar kid-specific of being asked to, like, hey, play this game you've never played before. We all know the rules to it. Oh, you failed at it. Boo. And how uncomfortable you feel in that moment.
Come with us. Do a sport.
Yeah, do a sport. And then also you get a little taste of the mean girl of the group saying, like, parades are just for Sparrow Scout goodies. I feel so bad for Hilda that she thinks that they want to talk about how rocks are nice.
Yeah.
And instead they're like, oh, that is a good rock for torturing animals.
Yeah. They see them as weapons.
Yeah. That's, as a kid, I was not going to collect rocks or appreciate them either. I wouldn't throw them at a living thing necessarily. But
there were cool rocks, but not on the ground, like fool's gold and stuff like that.
No, most rocks you'd find on the ground would just be like, oh, that's just chalk.
Or a piece of somebody's driveway.
Oh, it's gravel? How nice. Yeah. But yes, the kids decide it's time to terrorize some birds. And I love just Hilda's, they do it so well, just Hilda's instant shock of like, no, like she knows how wrong this is the second it happened. And it shows, it's a real telling moment for her character that she doesn't just stand idly by. She instantly is like, stop that. Yeah. Don't hurt these animals. And meanwhile, the other kids are just like, what? They're just birds. Who cares? Like, this was another like interesting moment in how they play the bad kids in the show is that when Hilda points out that it's bad to throw rocks at birds, only the lead bad boy, Trevor, only he is like, what? It's just birds. The others like put down their rocks and look embarrassed. I think they realize they messed up. So it shows they're not all bad, and also like not followers for the lead kid who tells them it's okay to throw rocks at birds. But when one bird gets hit, a secret is revealed.
Yes, I win!
What's the matter with you?
What? It's just a bird.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. I think.
Did that bird just talk?
No. Leave him alone.
Did anyone else hear that?
No.
Let me see him.
No!
Come on!
Get away! Wait to scare off the new kid.
It talked! Seriously! Did you really not hear that?
See, it's nice that they turn on Trevor instead of, I fully expected the kids to say, what a weird girl, or whatever.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Chase her
yeah,
away.
that was a nice change of pace that they all were like, you're weird, kid we follow around, and not, oh, she's weird.
But yeah, ravens are incredibly cool. They're much harder to spot than crows. I do love crows, but ravens are, they hide a little more. They're not out during the day as much, but they can vocalize. They can talk and learn human speech.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the raven from the raven is not a magic raven. Some ravens you can teach them like my bird. You could teach it how to speak.
They
can do the same thing.
Nevermore, actually.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
They're really cool, and they're so big. They're really, really big.
So the size in her arms there is pretty normal for raven size.
Yeah, they're like bigger than a football, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't. I really misunderstood the size of ravens. Where what a grackle is like between a crow and a raven.
A grackle's a little smaller than a crow, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know grackles because we had them a lot where my family lived in Georgia. We saw a lot of grackles.
I saw them for the first time when I went to Austin. I think they're very cute, and people don't like them. It really pissed me off because when I went to Austin, I was like, oh, these grackle birds are cool. I want to go online and see like videos of grackles, and I type in grackle, hit enter on YouTube. It's like, here's me killing grackles, grackle death compilation. Like, what? Don't hurt the grackles.
I recently read something that was about the difference between crows and ravens. And just size-wise, there was a picture of a young woman holding a crow, and it was sitting very nicely like on her finger. And then someone else was holding a raven, and that was sitting very nicely like on a forearm.
Yeah.
So I think, I think the raven might be actual size to Hilda here.
I like too that Hilda immediately goes like, no. He didn't talk. And I have to think that Trevor loses his mind after this episode. I think
I didn't know what I was getting into with this series. I didn't really know the premise too well, but I assumed from the beginning it's going to be like, like Calvin and Hobbes-ish, where these things exist for her, but they don't for everybody else. So I like that these things leak into the actual world. Mm-hmm. Like she can see them more than anyone else, but people can still hear the things and see the things sometimes.
Yeah.
I believe in a later episode, when something is going slightly wrong around Hilda, you see Trevor in the classroom going, I told you she's a witch. So yeah, I think he's permanently scarred.
You're right. I like how the magic there's a certain level of magic is accepted as reality in this world, but then there's some things that are like, oh no, that's too magical. Like it takes a little more to understand that. So then Hilda runs home holding the raven. He's voiced by UK actor Corey English. That's his name. But I like that he plays him with an American accent. That makes him honestly seem more magical in this world.
Yeah, that was definitely a choice they made. And I do like hearing one American accent in this very British world.
It's this classic comedy of Hilda hiding the bird and her mom saying like, you're always hanging out with weird creatures. I'm glad you've got some new friends. She's like, yeah, oh yeah. But yes, as she takes the bird back to her room, she introduces him to Alfred. He signs all the necessary paperwork, and they try to help him remember.
Sorry for the hassle, but now you'll be able to see Alpha.
Hello.
And this is my dear fox, Twig.
Oh.
The raven here was attacked by some awful children, but he seems to be all right now.
Oh, what a tale. This will make quite a report for the elves. So, what's your name?
I'm not sure.
Uh-huh. And how do you spend your time here in the city?
I don't know.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but he's not a great interview.
Oh no, I've lost my memory. This is bad. I think I'm important.
Who doesn't?
No, I have to be somewhere. There's something I need to do. But I can't even remember who I is.
Who I am.
Now I've forgotten grammar. And I love grammar.
You love grammar?
Maybe?
Okay, maybe we can figure this out.
It's a fun character. I love the design, how the beak is just, the body is just one singular color. There's no, just seems like a blob of color. I want a stuffed animal of this thing. There's got to be one, I have to assume.
The lack of a beak and that it's just a singular color like that was a bold choice in the comic that they continue on into the show like that. It makes him I think it makes them more relatable to, or like more cute and lovable.
Yeah, it does look Moomin-y, like just a big blob.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Soft and squishable, kind of like just a round figure.
Yeah, when you look at it, you don't think of like feeling the feathers on it or anything. Yeah, yeah. But the relationship between the Raven and Alpha in this are really funny too. Like they're a good combination of like the guy who doesn't know anything and then the guy who's like, oh, I know everything. Yes, like that. Such a and also just a funny combination of like this freaked out American with this very like stuffy proper Brit. Like, who doesn't? Oh my.
I mean, it makes sense that they are that small, but I love just the tiny contracts. They're just like postage stamp size.
Yeah. And God, that's like, I think I'm important. Who doesn't? It's also cute. I think it was smart to get Alpha in here so he could hang around with the Raven for his scenes later, so they can chat as they go on an adventure.
I think his name is Alpha. Because I just assume that British people add an R to a lot of words that end in vowels. Is it Alpha or Alfer?
On IMDb, it's ALFUR.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
so it's the other thing. There is an R that's not being pronounced instead of an R that's being added.
I do believe.
Okay, sorry to correct you. I just was confused.
I'm going to triple check this on the wiki right now, but
I guess depending on the British accent, you either add an R or you don't say the R.
It.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Yes, it is ALFUR. Alpha.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like I've heard like Seger or like words like that.
I guess it depends on how posh you are.
My amigo.
But yeah, I thought it was Alpha until I was.
Thank you.
ALPHA Alpha.
I was calling him Crandall.
But yeah, they're a funny combo in here. But they're planning as they're trying to remember. He remembers some statue of a bearded guy in a cape. They think they're going to start looking for it, but instead the mom interrupts and takes Hilda out. And that I agree with the mom deciding like to be a little suspicious and see who Hilda was talking to. And as far as she knows, she brought a wild bird into the house. That I don't think she'd be entirely against that, but she definitely doesn't want to leave it alone in the house.
Yeah, there's like a giant raven in your bed.
You're just asking for everything to be destroyed and pooped on.
Exactly.
Yeah. The mom pretends that she needs to get her wallet, but she instead lets the bird free. And Twig wants to follow along, but gets pulled back inside. So that prevents Twig from having any adventures in this episode, which is too bad. But so the Raven is trapped outside without Hilda realizing it. So they head out on an adventure while the Raven tries to figure out how to go searching on his own.
Oh boy. I've forgotten how to fly. I've forgotten how to fly! The horror! The humiliation! I'm finished. Done for! We better just go back to the fire escape!
How?
I'll fly us up to... Oh!
We'll just have to search for the statue on foot.
I'm a bird. I don't walk. If I did, I probably wouldn't have these little sticks for legs.
I walk, and I've got little sticks for legs.
Fair point. Let's go.
Little sticks for legs. If you want, this is just going to be full of bird facts this episode. There's like, actually, birds, it takes a lot of energy for birds to fly. So they don't do it. If they don't have to do it, they won't. It takes a ton of energy to fly.
I could see that being tough to flap your arms that much to stay in the air. Yeah, I guess for birds, it's just a lot of you're in the city. You're definitely more in danger if you're walking around.
Definitely, yeah.
All the poor little pigeons with not fully complete feet I've seen walking around the city.
They're so resilient. It's not in San Francisco. It's much worse. But whenever I see a pigeon out there, they don't have toes. They just walk around on little pegs. And they make it work.
Birdies,
They make it work.
We get those inside Penn Station in New York. So you'll be in the waiting area waiting for your train. You'll see like a little pigeon who somehow got in there walking around with like one toed foot and one little peg leg.
Selling pencils.
Yeah.
Man, it's kind of rare. I feel like I used to see more birds in the BART stations, the train stations around the Bay Area. I don't think I see them as much anymore. I mean, I guess I've seen a couple, but yeah, the bird. That shows you that he's kind of mythical. That he is pretty fine after not only getting hit with a rock, but also like falling a full story and smashing on a garbage can. I think he's, as we find out later, he's kind of an immortal beast.
Yeah.
But yes, the two of them going on adventures is fun. As meanwhile, Hilda is walking around, and also, when the mom goes into Hilda's room to take out the bird. That's why I really appreciated like how unique and like dense the design of Hilda's bedroom is. Like it really feels like lived in. I think it's a really great design. So yes, Hilda, she's not afraid of like flying or giants, but a car like that's scary. She almost gets hit by a car without watching for the walk sign. And there's some really fun animation here of seeing like all the people dressed up for the bird parade. Like, really
all the
great
costumes.
designs.
Yeah,
I love all these costumes, like those the sweaters and like the little feathers they have on their costumes. I want to like reach through the TV and just give them a squish. Like it looks so nice, and the way they've shaped them with that color palette that this show has. I just loved it.
Their outfits are also autumnal. Like I just love the like yellow and orange with it. I mean, it really does remind me of Gryffindor as well. And also like the way the folks are dressed up. It reminds me of the quaint way you'd see people dressed up for like soccer matches or whatever, football matches on the pitch, as they would say. I like the home. Also, like it feels not store bought. Like everybody's costume looks like homemade. I really like that.
We also found, I think there's like a hidden Kermit costume in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And if you listen to the crowd noise, there's definitely some voice actor doing their best, like, oh, Kermit the Frog in there.
Oh, wow.
Is there some Muppet connection we're missing between Hilda and
I don't know. I
Henson?
didn't notice that until last night. And it was even my boyfriend called it out. He was like, there was a Kermit. Did you see the Kermit? I was like, what? No.
I know the Kermit you're talking about in design, but I had missed that in the like the sounds in the background. That's pretty funny. And also more of her mom trying to pass along things like we get the introduction to the Sparrow Scouts, who be a big part of this going on. And I like that, her mother's just trying to tell, like, when I was a girl, I did this. Like, this would be fun. Like, she's trying to get her, there's a certain line, I think, for parents who you don't want to force your childhood on them. But I don't think I think the mother is walking the right line of that, of like, well, I like this as a kid, maybe you would, kind of thing.
And when we see future Sparrow Scout adventures, like they go outdoors, they're doing like park projects. So it is something that's in Hilda's wheelhouse a little bit. So
Yeah, I like the mom's attitude here. I see a lot of people. I will judge parents, by the way. I have no children, but I will only judge parents who are sort of like planning their child's fandom before it's born. It's like they're going to watch this movie when they're 2. I can't wait to show them this. I think people just became bigger fans of things, and fandom became more of a thing because my parents were like, "Now it's time for you to watch this, Bob." They never sat me down to like, "It's time for you to see this thing I like." My mom would be like, "Oh, I like Mad Magazine. I like that. But there was never like a formal ceremony where I was sat sat down to experience something.
Yeah, I don't think my parents ever watched me watching something to be like, what do you think?
Nudging you like, I liked Monty Python too as a kid. I bet you do.
Exactly.
I also, I like that Hilda almost meets her future friends, Frida and David, but it's not time yet in the series. So when she's about to be introduced to them, she instead just runs away because she gets distracted by the Raven float, which the float is really well designed too. I like that even though you think like any bird design would look the same, the second she looks at it is like, whoa, that's the exact bird I just saved. What's the deal with this? And the mother explains the tale, the myth of the bird statue.
Mum, what's that bird statue about?
That's the Great Raven. This whole festival is in his honor. He blesses the city by flying over the parade every year.
What if he doesn't show up?
Well, it's been a long time since that ever happened. But when it did, the city had a very bad year.
How bad?
Oh, there was a drought, the harvest was ruined, that sort of thing. I want to say famine and plague.
Okay.
Greetings, fellow scouts. How do you do? This is my daughter, Hilda. Excuse me.
I love too how the mom just loves the sparrow. You can tell she still loves the Sparrow Scout. She does the full salute, like, how do you do? it's so sweet. Like, and yeah, also my daughter hit. She ran away.
You get the sense she's used to saying that a lot in those exact.
She couldn't even get through the introduction without Hilda running off.
But I also just love to say, like, want to say famine and plague? Like, it's just, that's the kind of like dry British wit I love too. Like, it's just, another thing this is stylistically it reminds me of too is a lot of the humorous writing of Terry Pratchett. Like, it reminds me a lot of the Terry Pratchett books. Like, he a very English sensibility, also a very like magical realism that kind of meets in the middle of like parochial like mundanity of magical things.
Yeah, like whimsical cynicism.
Yeah,
This series is not cynical at all, but the whimsy is there.
Oh yeah, Pratchett is a much more cynical writer. Very, very much so. But yes, we get to hear about the Great Raven, and it's time for Hilda to come clean with her mom, which I really like that the mom is she feels bad, but then is quickly on board with what Hilda's telling her. Which I feel like even 10 years ago in a show like this, the mother would have been like, "Oh, come on, enough of your craziness," or whatever.
That old Raven, I kicked it out. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but this clip shows the difference.
Hilda, what are you doing?
Mum, I think the Great Raven might be at our house, and he's lost his memory. We've got to tell him who he is.
It was not the Great Raven. You just found a raven.
You knew I found a raven?
Yes, and I put him out.
You did what?
I had to. You can't leave random birds in the house.
He's not random. He talks.
Well, he didn't say anything to me.
Oh, no. Come on. Maybe he's still near the building. He's gone. But I know what he's looking for. The one thing he remembers is a statue of a bald, bearded man
with a cape.
You know it?
It's locally famous. Let's go!
I like keeping in a bit of the music there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reminds me
that
of
it's driving and has that percussive this is high stakes chase time, but still played in that high enough pitch that it's like, we're having fun, and it's still this British town. And
I'm sure Hilda's mom is fed up with all of these new animals in her house all the time, but she should have checked to see if that bird was injured first. Like, don't let a wounded animal just outside to die horribly.
I like how she's like, well, he didn't say anything to me. Like,
I do like the term locally famous.
Yeah, that's such a funny way to put it.
She's very proud of it. Like, it's locally famous.
She reminds me of Marge Simpson and how she felt so much pride in Springfield as well. Like
part of us all. A part of us all. A part of us all.
Her mother takes her kind of on a tour of searching for the Great Raven. Now that they know that he's so great, and while they're looking around, the Raven runs into some cats. Which I like that he's like, "Oh, now I remember what cats are." Oh no. That's pretty cute. And then I also like that they take a moment for Hilda and the mother to talk about Trollberg and how she's starting to see the differences in it. I like that a lot, and how this little moment of in the next clip of the mother explaining to Hilda how to look at Trollberg from a different angle.
How do you find your way around here? Every street looks exactly alike.
You know, some people think that about rocks.
That's crazy. Every rock is different.
Well, the city is like that too. Take those houses, for example. Look at the doors. That one's a nice deep red. And that one's white with windows on it and a knocker.
And that one's rustic with a wood finish, which I quite like. I see what you mean. They're similar, but they've all got their own personality. And that's just the start. There's different chimneys and lampposts, and different cars, and plants breaking up the pavement.
You see? You're getting it already.
Don't get me wrong. Trollberg's still less interesting than a rock. But it's close.
Yeah, I do like that scene. It's just like, well, here are the things I appreciate, and here's the nuance I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just shrug it off.
Yeah. And
I feel like we've seen the reverse of that scene in a million other things of someone from the city moves to the rural area or the countryside, and they're like, how can you tell with all these trees around? I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah, it's like, it's just a bunch of hills. This is boring. Yeah. It's interesting to see it taken the other way of, explaining how a city can have its own kind of like faux naturalism or distinctness. Like, I think it helps too that Trollberg is, it is definitely more populous than Hilda grew up, but it's also like it's not like a metropolis, and there's not like a bunch of skyscrapers, It's
like a quaint little village.
Yes, yeah, a little township, I suppose. And yeah, I also like that to her, rocks are the most interesting thing. It's such a funny device they use with Hilda. And okay, then comes a gag that really reminded me of things that like gave me anxiety watching them as a kid. It bugged me in movies as a kid where, for plot purposes, characters would almost see each other and then just miss them. Like, it really upset me as a kid. The one I remember the most is in the theater watching American Tail, and like three different times Fievel is almost found by his parents, but neither knows they're that close. And I'm just like, they're right there.
He got Bluth blocked.
So this kind of moment with them being right there, right after the Raven is there, it reminded me of that same kind of anxiousness I felt as a kid. But it's funny, they end up like, they don't even know they're right in front of the statue. Like the Raven and Alpha are a very silly combo here. And I also like his thing, like that's where the opening clip comes from, of the Raven shouting out names, and he's like, they're all wrong. He's like, I'm bad with names, I think.
Then we find out at the end he is.
Yeah.
He remembered correctly. Helga and Zelda.
And I also like that when Trevor finds him because he's screaming, he's like, you can talk. And then the Raven goes, no. They barely miss him, and that's when Hilda and the mother decide they need to get to a higher vantage point. Maybe they'll be able to find him that way. And the parade is about to begin, but the bird hasn't shown up yet, so everybody's starting to get a little uncomfortable. But as they get upstairs, Hilda and the mother both come to a kind of understanding in another really sweet scene here.
I know you miss the wilderness, Hilda, but I promise, Trollberg is a pretty cool place to grow up too. I liked it anyway.
I'm sure it'll be great. Sorry if I've been a bit of a brat.
And I'm sorry I put the Raven out.
It's okay. I should have told you about it, but I know you don't like me making friends with creatures.
Hilda, I love that you can make friends with all manner of things. I just think you ought to be open to befriending humans as well.
I am. But those kids just weren't a good fit. They threw rocks at birds, Mum.
In that case, I'm proud of you for not making friends.
Oh,
It's a very sweet scene.
Right in the field.
Yeah, I didn't think this show would get to me, but it did eventually. I was like, do your worst, Twee show.
No, I like that the mom understands, like, she should be happy that Hilda can identify when there are kids she shouldn't be friends with, too, instead of falling into a bad crowd, as it were. Yeah. I like that she's like, they threw rocks at birds, Mum. Oh, well, it's sweet. I also like that Hilda, she's mature enough to know she was acting like a brat. She's like, yeah, okay, I was being a little bit of a brat. Though this show is such a nice show that the bad kids are just a little mischievous, and even her acting like a brat is not so mean.
Yeah, and the bad kids immediately realize they're being too bad.
Yes.
Yeah. When she apologized for being a brat, I was like, have you been a brat? I don't know.
I the most bratty thing was, like, I get in this episode anyway, was her over dramatic coughing at a car driving by,
or maybe just running away when her mom was trying to introduce her to people.
I suppose that's a little bratty. Yeah. But that was more her just getting carried away with things. But yes, Trevor has caught the Raven, locks him up, and he's trying to get him to talk to his friends, and he's just not doing it. And he's making himself look even crazier to his friends, really. And I also like that Alpha kind of gets a little bit of revenge on Trevor. Trevor does pay, like, a certain amount of punishment for his misdeeds. Like, he gets laughed at or gets kind of messed around with in his face by Alpha, and he gets to look a little crazy, which, don't be a jerk, Trevor. This wouldn't happen. Like,
Exactly.
don't grab a wild animal and shove it into a cage and then shake the cage around. He's as bad at shaking cages.
That's also some of the role Alpha gets to fill out in this series, that he gets to do invisible mischief due to all that paperwork.
I love his that he's an invisible mischief maker who also loves having proper paperwork. That's a funny combo. But yes, Trevor attempts to show his friends, but just gets messed around with, but captures the Raven once more. And I do like his pronouncement as he walks away, like, never mind, you're all terrible. And then Hilda and her mom catch Trevor walking around with the bird in the cage. I like that Hilda can identify, like, no, Trevor is not to be trusted. And her mom's like, yeah, I agree. Bad kid.
Evil.
Which, again, this was another bit that it was leading me to think, like, I thought Trevor was going to be so bad that he'd go and eventually go, like, oh, well, if you're not going to talk, screw you, bird, and he tries to, like, drown it. But
I was worried that was going to happen. Unfortunately, it was an accident.
Yeah, they keep him modestly innocent, But before we get that scene, we do get a quick little cutaway to the Sparrow Scouts, which lets us see David and Frida in a very cute scene that tells you a lot about their characters.
Oh, Cruddlesticks! The Raven didn't come. What's going to happen now?
I don't know. But a Sparrow Scout is prepared for anything. Flashlight, water, matches, camping knife, and rations for 3 days.
Can I share your rations?
I'm afraid it's every woman for herself in these dark times.
So ruthless.
Yeah. It sets them up well, as if David is kind of, the more innocent dreamer of the pair, and Frida is a very, like, A-type personality.
She's a prepper.
Yes.
In the next episode, when you get to see them all work together on a Sparrow Scouts project, Frida's got, like, a whole binder of, here's how we're going to do this by hour. We have 30 seconds more for small talk. Like, she is very on point.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, I love David's little, like, oh, Cruddlesticks. Like, that's
Cruddlesticks is a fun curse.
I like saying things in a British accent, honestly. I'm not going to lie. That's then also just the great animation of how Frida, looking at him in the face, slowly zips up her bag to be like, no, you're not getting my rations.
Yeah.
You should have been prepared, buddy. Sorry.
Like, will the famine start immediately?
I mean, Frida's ready just in case. And so now it's nighttime, and there's a really great night color palette to it, like the colors, children.
Yes, the color design is really stunning on this show.
I just like there's definitely that Hilda has that. Here's the main character because she has turquoise hair.
Yeah.
But just the color palettes of everything, it's so rich and warm. There's a lot of red, orange, yellow, which I feel like you don't see a lot in kids' cartoons. You see more like pastels or all the primary colors.
Yeah.
And it just feels like that warmth of the color and the warmth of just the personality of the show really combine well to make this just cozy.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I finally realized throughout this podcast what this whole thing reminds me of. It reminds me of Celeste, the pixely platforming game. Like the main character looks a bit like Hilda. I don't think there's any direct inspiration, but the music and the touchy-feeliness and the tweeness and the, I don't know, there's like the emotional tone of it reminds me of that game.
Yeah, it's nice. I think, I do believe in one of our live shows, we've met the composer for that.
Yes.
That video game. Yeah.
Nina has done work for one of her albums at least.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I don't know why I didn't see that before either. The adventure actually is kind of a platforming level of how the mother and Hilda are running through the shortcuts and hopping over fences and whatnot. I like you can see, you get a little flash on the mother's face of like, this is bringing me back kind of feel. Like she's going through the things she used to do when she was a lass. I like that. And it shows that, her adventurous spirit maybe was passed down to Hilda in a way, I like that too.
Yeah, because the house they lived in the woods, I think was maybe her father's house. Because I think they said, Hilda was saying like, oh, my grandfather lived here.
Yeah.
So she definitely split her time between Trollberg and the wilderness. But yeah, she definitely has that spirit of adventure that she has shared with Hilda. And I think that's also why they have a good relationship, because she also has that or instilled that in her.
And another stylistic choice I really like is how you can see it a lot in their, slow conversation scenes like they have at the top of the lighthouse, or the way you can see the eyes through the hair, like a hairline will go over eyes, but you see the eyes through it. I really like that trick too. It's a great
very
artistic
anime
choice.
Yeah. I was thinking that too. I was like, that's a little anime. Like you see eyebrows or eyes through the hair.
And so then we get to the climax of the episode. Trevor is shouting at the Raven, and I do think he comes off as a very like understandable little boy who's just like, why won't you talk to me? I'm frustrated. Like there's not malice in him of like, you stupid bird, I should kill you. Like he doesn't say that. He's just like, why won't you do this thing? Why my friends are laughing at me? Like they even want you to have empathy for the meanest kid in the show.
Yeah, the great Raven has done the worst thing to like a tween, which is embarrass them in front of their friends. So you have that like sense of empathy even for him.
And then it's a good choice too that he only accidentally like through shock does he lose his handle on the Raven. Like he did not want to drown the bird like that. That was, I think, an important thing for the character there too. Yeah. But he does fall into the water. Hilda and the mother arrive just as he's about to drown. And that's when Hilda reminds him like, you're the great Raven. And I love, you can see.
Oh yeah. That's a great moment.
Yeah. Just a little bit of realization on his face as he falls down in the water.
Yeah.
And Hilda jumps in to save him. And this is the moment that I really was like, okay, this is straight out of Spirited Away, this moment here.
You're so right about that.
Yeah. In Spirited Away, spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, but Sen in the movie, she's befriended this guy who also can't remember his past, saves him in some water, and realizes like, oh no, you're actually a dragon, like you're a magical creature, and then she flies along on a dragon. So look, that's not exactly how it happens in Spirited Away, like but that's the gist of it.
It's a rough sketch of it.
Yeah.
This
definitely gave me it reminded me of it. I'm not saying they ripped it off or like how one original, but
inspired by.
Yeah, sure. But I love the great bird's like transformation off screen and just flying out of the water.
That's what got me all tingly. Like the way it's like turning around like triumphantly in the sky can finally like really flex with its new bird powers or remembered bird powers.
Yeah, and then the music, like the way the fun music comes back in as it's flying around and celebrating, and he's like, "Oh, I remember now. I told you I was bigger." Like so much fun stuff with the Raven remembering now, and once he remembers, he then explains the history that brought him here.
I told you I was bigger. I only take that little form when I'm being discreet.
I knew it! You're the Great Raven!
Well, not exactly.
What?
It was all a big misunderstanding, actually. A long, long time ago, I was passing over the city when I landed on the statue over there. The people thought I was the Raven messenger of the god they worshipped. That year, there was a great harvest, and everyone prospered. They thought it was my doing, so the following year, they started this festival in my honor.
What about the bad year?
That was the year I missed the festival. I was off somewhere else, probably at home. The bad luck had nothing to do with me, but everyone thought they displeased me. After that, I decided to make the effort to show myself every year.
I like that there was nothing mythical or interesting about the year. He was like, I just forgot.
I forgot. Totally an accident like that. I really love that revelation there, that it's kind of a comment on, like, you know, myth building or myth making, or even just like religion in general, of like, well, yeah, I was a giant bird who showed up at the right time, and then people told a story about me, and the story just kept growing.
And he is a magical, immortal bird, seemingly, but he didn't make anything magic happen there. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time. It's a fun legend.
Yeah, we see him coming to a group of people that look like Vikings. So he's at least 1,000 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also love the design of the statue of their god, too, of just this, like, he's funny proportions, beard, all that, like little hands, but giant body.
Made me think of, like, oh, right, the British Isles are very old, and people have been living on them for a long time.
That's true.
Yes.
No, I think especially the whole thing with the Raven on a god. I mean, it feels, you know, like I said, this is very like Scandinavian style. That definitely feels like, you know, Odin with his raven and everything. But, you know, it's kind of, I like too that though the statues are vague, the gods are vague, like it could be any kind of mythology they're talking about. Like, though this world also doesn't seem to be a particularly Christian world too. Like it's much more of a pagan belief system here.
I'm into it.
Here for it.
Yeah.
But
Way
yeah,
more fun.
I also love that. Like he comes back because he feels bad, but also loves the festival. He's like, oh, I missed a year, and they thought I was mad at them, so now I just keep coming back.
Yeah, it's so cool. He's like, they made him feel so bad. I'll just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sweet. And I also then, like, he's like, well, no, I'm a Thunderbird. And the way he gets kind of a determination on his face as he does it, that's really cool.
And I love how he lights up all of the floats magically as he soars over the town.
And also he says, like, oh, they seem to like that. That's really cute. And though apparently, I mean, it is magic lightning, because you'd think he'd electrocute Hilda on his back when he did that, but apparently not. But yeah, when the parade starts working again, that's great. And also just the great animation of the flight of him just like swooping around the city, and the way Hilda like jumps off. Though, man, when you talk about stress, I feel so bad for her mom watching her daughter fly away on a random bird and then just like dive off of him 20 feet in the air.
And there are no real questions, like, oh, hello. You're back.
She's already learned to deal with that. Like, well, it's just Hilda. She's a rough and tumble kid. That's how it is. But yeah, and then when the bird flies by, you also get a fun character moment of David and Frida, where David is just like, was there a girl on that bird? And then Frida's like, of course not. Come on. And also I like the little device of showing the teary-eyed crowd member who's just like, yes, yeah, like he's so happy.
Yeah, they have a lot of really good background characters in this. It's always fun to like give it a little bit of a pause and just look out over the crowd. They spend the time on it.
And Hilda and her mom reconnect. They watch the rest of the parade together. I like that Hilda's mother even takes her to the place where she used to always watch the bird parade when she was a kid. It's really sweet. The parade, when they watch the parade pass by, it does get a little low frame rate, but I understand why, like budget wise.
Yeah, I was just.
But what they show looks cool.
It felt like a stylistic choice, and I don't know what their intent was, but they were definitely like cutting frames for some reason. I just don't know why. It didn't look distracting. I'm just like, oh, I wonder why they're doing this. But you could definitely tell, like, oh, this is much lower frame rate. But there are lots of things moving on the screen at once.
Yeah, they got to keep the render machine down.
all the characters look great, and I love like it's one of those ones you pause it and you're like, oh, here was a family that's all dressed up as eggs. Here's someone in a bird costume with a duck on a leash.
I love that guy. I saw that guy last night too while watching.
Yeah.
I was like, he's my favorite.
It's a very ambitious scene at the end.
Yeah. Which, like, again, I was also thinking of you, Bob, watching it like just a parade about birds in general. Every type of bird we love.
Why can't we live in that world? No, I've not read this graphic novel. I have to imagine this is like one giant splash page of just a glorious parade, like that he spent a long time drawing.
I bet you.
Yeah.
I bet you're right. But yes, as the episode wraps up, Hilda and her mother come to an understanding.
What a lovely view. Alpha, glad you could join us.
Mum, he's in your bag.
I'll sign the paperwork as soon as we get home.
Thank you. It is a great spot, though. How did you know about this?
This is where I would come to watch the parade when I was your age. I know it might not match the view you had up there.
Actually, it's much better.
Aww. Very, very sweet. I like you can even see in Hilda's face that she understands that her mom is being a little vulnerable here of like, I'd like you to like the parade. And then Hilda's like, I do. Like she's kind of comforting her mother there. It's really sweet.
But you can also see it in the way they draw her expressions in her eyes. Like she does enjoy the parade a little bit, especially now that she met their great Raven and understands like, hey, these people are into weird supernatural things too. Maybe I'll be all right.
Yeah. It's so sweet, and then them watching the fireworks together is a really lovely way to end the episode.
And the last one is the Great Raven.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, a very sweet episode of the show, very bird centric with a funny bird in the middle of it too.
And I forgot, like all Netflix credits are just like black and white with white text. I'm like, oh, what's the cool ending? Oh, right, it's a Netflix show. There is no cool ending.
Well, they want you to skip the credits instantly.
Yeah, like, forget these people. Keep going.
I got to say, again, Netflix, it was really hard to even find out the storyboarder on this because every time I'd be like, okay, it's time to watch credits. Oh, shit. Okay, go to I want to press the watch credits button. Don't just play the next episode, please. But especially on shows where like they spend money on a credit song, like to just skip it, it's kind of rude, I think, to the creators as well. They just did that on the new season of BoJack too. They've done it on every season of BoJack,
right.
But when I just watched the new season, it was again more consternation of like most BoJack episodes end with you wanting to think for a little bit, and so when they like in 4 seconds start the next episode, I'm like, no, give me a moment.
Or sometimes they've made a good choice on what, like they play a different song over the credits and you're like, oh, I want to listen to this. So they come up with a funny song to play.
I know.
I think definitely in this final season, they had one where the credit song was the full Do the BoJack dance. And I was like, no, I am playing this. Any last thoughts on this episode, Casey? I think I said it before, but I'll say it again. This show just feels very cozy. So sometimes it's nice to sit back with a good cozy show. I really love the art style to this. Like when they zoom in on characters' faces, you really see like charcoal or graphite edges, like in the thick black lines. I love this color palette. I love, like, as you mentioned, the sky is always just 3 stripes of color and not a gradient. And like an attention to the way things are drawn. Everything is drawn in a very like soft, curvy, fluffy manner. And I always dig a magical realism story. So this is definitely one of those shows. Whenever my friends are like, "Oh, I have 2 kids and they just watch a bunch of garbage," I'm like, "Well, show them Hilda, or show them She-Ra, and all these children's cartoons I enjoy watching."
Yeah, no, it makes me, 10 years ago when I worked at a video store, there was this one Hilda-like girl who would come in, and her mother was like, "Oh, she loves Ghibli films. Is there anything else at the video store to get?" And I'm like, boy, I know of a ton of things she could watch, but they're not at this video store. They weren't really available. So, now I wish I could go back in time and tell her, like, well, in a decade from now, when you're an adult, they will have Hilda video. They'll have stuff like this much more readily available.
Yeah, I was before I started watching this, I was worried it would be too twee and too saccharine, but it really wasn't. And I only think that because when I was in my early 20s and like the early to mid 2000s, twee was huge. Like things that were twee were big, like bands like Of Montreal, Wes Anderson,
Belle and Sebastian.
Exactly. Flight of the Conchords, super twee show. Now, like my stomach turns when I go back to those things, and I'm always worried, like, oh, will I not like this because it's too twee? But no, I think the Britishness of it really cuts down on the possible, treacliness it could be, that it could have. I think the dry Britishness really is a nice counterpart to the tweeness that could be offensive to me personally, but it's a perfect match of those two sensibilities, and that's why I think it's a good show.
It's a warm mug of tea of a show. Yeah, it has a little bit more of that Calvin and Hobbes feel and a little less of like, my purse is a lunchbox.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yes. But man, Casey, thank you so much for recording with us. I mean, you're our top tier patron. I don't know if you have anything you'd want to plug in our normal plug section, but I mean, if there's other cool stuff you like, you could plug something too.
Yeah, absolutely. I do love that Netflix She-Ra. Everybody go watch that. I love BoJack Horseman if you want something much more depressing and something animated much more depressing to watch on Netflix. Everyone go watch anime, get a Crunchyroll account, watch it on Amazon, whatever. Vinland Saga's great.
I have to say, I had some trouble working this week because the final season of BoJack fucked me up so bad.
Oh, man. See, that's why I can't watch this. Like, I'm not going to do it to myself.
But you'll have a good time, Bob. I'm not going to say any more about the final season for spoilers, but yes. Yeah. But anyway, Casey, thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing you again on the show.
So thanks again to Casey for being a mega huge supporter of our network. And if you want to help support our network too, please go on over to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And if you sign up at the $5 level, you can get access to all of our podcasts 1 week ahead of time and ad-free. And you'll also have access to all of the podcasts behind the $5 paywall. That's all of the Patreon exclusive podcasts we've been doing behind that paywall for almost 3 years now. That's over 100 bonus podcasts, but that includes all of our limited miniseries. And there will be 2 new ones coming in 2020. The next one will be coming very soon. And the last one we did was Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 1. But there's honestly way too many things to list. So many things we've done over the past 2.5 years. So if you like hearing us talk about cartoons, there's so much you haven't heard. And you can just listen to it all for $5 if you go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And Henry can tell everybody out there what is happening at the $10 level. 1 extra long podcast once a month that patrons get to vote on, often over 4 hours long. And last month we did our longest podcast ever at that tier.
That is correct. That is the What a Cartoon Movie podcast, which you get the extended preview of that once a month in your What a Cartoon feed. But if you want to hear the full over 4 hours of us talking about films like The Animatrix or this month's upcoming one, The Great Mouse Detective, then you need to sign up at the $10 level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You get access to the entire back catalog. I dare say close to 50 hours of $10 premium content, plus a ton of other older $10 premium stuff too that you only get if you are that level of supporter. So please sign up today at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. Find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. I have another podcast, Retronauts. Please head on over to retronauts.com or patreon.com/Retronauts to find out how you can listen to 2 exclusive episodes every month. Henry, how about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. I certainly tweet a lot about politics these days, but also about cartoons and fun things. And you can always stay up to date with what's going on the Patreon and on our free feed podcasts if you follow me there. And if you really want to stay up to date on all of our comings and goings, you should follow the @TalkSimpsonsPod Twitter account. @TalkSimpsonsPod is the official account of our podcasting network for Talking Simpsons and What a Cartoon. So please follow that.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next week for the Goof Troop episode, Nightmare on Goof Street, and we'll see you then.
Maybe I should get out more. I was thinking tomorrow I could go out and explore the city on my own. Wow!
It might be better if I showed you around a bit more first.